Ever heard someone say, "You've changed, but not in a good way"? There's a sting in their voice, like your growth is some kind of betrayal. It sounds simple, but behind those words, a storm of unspoken judgment. They say it when you stop showing up to the same places, laughing at the same jokes, living the same cycles. But what they don't say out loud is this: your transformation threatens them. Because when God starts lifting you up, not everyone claps. Some people just whisper behind your back. And what they whisper, that's where jealousy lives. You're not imagining it. The looks, the tones, the sideways comments. You're acting different. It sounds like concern, but it hits like accusation. They don't mean it as a compliment, it's more like a warning. As if growing means you've somehow betrayed the person you used to be. And if you're not grounded, those 5 little words can shake you. Can make you second-guess the progress you prayed for. Can make you shrink just so others feel tall again. But hear this, that different they're pointing at. That's not rebellion. That's transformation. Jealousy rarely shows up shouting in the streets. No, it shows up quiet, subtle, dressed in voices that used to cheer for you. Voices of people you trusted. People you thought would rise with you. But not everyone is willing to grow, so they resent you when you do. They'll try to dim your light just so theirs looks brighter. They'll twist your boundaries into distance. Your purpose into pride. Your peace into selfishness. But what they'll never admit is how much it cost you to change. You've walked through sleepless nights, whispered prayers through clenched teeth, faced battles no one knew about. So no, you're not acting different just for the sake of it. You're acting different because you've earned your healing. Because you're guarding your peace like your life depends on it, because sometimes it does. The version of you they miss. That version tolerated too much. Smiled through too much pain. Didn't know your worth. That version made them comfortable. But this new you. You set boundaries. You choose silence over gossip. You pause before reacting. You've learned that protecting your purpose is more important than pleasing people. And yes, that looks different. Because it is different. Growth always has a cost. Sometimes that cost is the comfort of familiar relationships. Sometimes it's the approval of those who secretly needed you to stay small. But don't shrink. Don't fold yourself back into the person you fought to leave behind. They didn't see the shame. They didn't see the sacrifice. They only see the light, and instead of asking where you got it, they scoff and say, "You've changed." Let them talk. Let them misunderstand. Let them say what they will. Because you weren't called to be understood. You were called to be faithful. And faithfulness, it always looks strange to people who chase feelings. When you stop gossiping, they'll say you're too serious. When you stop partying, they'll say you're no fun. When you say no without guilt, they'll say you're selfish. But here's the truth. That's exactly what jealousy does. It rewrites your story to make your growth fit their comfort zone. But should you shrink yourself to be understood, or keep rising into who you were always meant to be? Previously, we uncovered the truth behind the phrase "you're acting different." How jealousy often wears a familiar face and disguises itself in the voices of those who once stood beside you. But that's just the beginning of how envy works its way into your life. Because that's exactly what jealousy does. It distorts your journey, reshapes your story. Not to reflect your truth, but to make your transformation more palatable from their level of understanding. It tries to edit your testimony into something they can control, something that won't force them to confront their own stagnation. But hear me clearly, don't you dare shrink for anyone. Not for the friend who suddenly thinks you're moving too fast, whose encouragement has turned into warnings masked as concern. Not for the family member who looks you in the eye and says, "Don't forget where you came from," as if growth is a betrayal of your roots. You remember where you came from, but that doesn't mean you're obligated to stay there. You can honor your past without offering it your future. And if someone's affection for you is tied to how small you remain, if their love hinges on your willingness to shrink, to dim, to stay the version of you that made them feel comfortable, that's not love. That's control. That's fear masked as care. That's insecurity pretending to be intimacy. See, jealous people don't actually hate your light. What they hate is the way your light exposes the dark corners they've spent years avoiding. They don't mind you shining, until your shine starts to reveal the places in themselves they've refused to heal. So yes, you're acting different, and you should be. Because when the Spirit of God takes root in your heart, staying the same is no longer an option. He stretches you, He shapes you, He starts shifting your desires, changing your appetite for what used to entertain you, drawing you away from what once fed your ego but starved your soul. And when that shift happens, when your walk starts to straighten, when your vision sharpens and your choices change, expect the jealousy, expect the whispers, expect the subtle shade, but don't stop. Don't slow down. Don't question the process just because others can't comprehend the promise. Because who you're becoming is far more valuable than who they prefer you to remain. So when they say you're acting different, don't take it as an insult. Hear it as confirmation, proof that something divine is unfolding in you that they can't put into words. And then, there's that other phrase. You've heard it too. Maybe you've even laughed it off. Must be nice. 3 little words said with a smirk, maybe tossed into a conversation casually. But they hit differently, don't they? Because beneath that laugh, there's a bite, a sharp edge. It's not admiration, it's resentment dressed up as sarcasm. When someone says must be nice, they're not complimenting what you have. They're questioning whether you deserve it. And half the time, they don't even realize they're doing it. Because jealousy rarely shows up with a scowl. No. It's usually delivered through familiar voices, through people who should be celebrating you. But instead, they critique what they secretly wish was theirs. That phrase must be nice isn't about your blessing. It's about their discomfort. It's what people say when they want to downplay your effort and highlight your outcome. When admitting they had the same opportunities but didn't take the same steps would hurt too much. So, it's easier to call your success luck than to confront their own passivity. It's easier to mock your blessings than to reckon with their own unhealed patterns. But that phrase, it's a shield. A fragile one. One that protects fragile egos from confronting the truth. That you didn't stumble into favor. You sacrificed for it. You prayed for it. You bled for it. You endured what others wouldn't. You kept walking when no one clapped. You showed up when no one watched. You believed when everything around you said quit. But jealousy doesn't want truth. Jealousy wants comfort. And comfort is easier to maintain when we pretend that the people shining today just got lucky. But here's what they don't see. They see the crown, but not the weight it took to wear it. They see the joy, but not the nights you cried out to God, begging for peace. They see the house, but not the homelessness. They see the harvest, but they miss the drought. So the next time someone shrugs and mutters must be nice, don't let it pierce your spirit. Don't let it make you question your path. Don't let it shrink what God has grown in you. Because you know the cost. You remember the locked doors. You remember the silent seasons. You remember the battles with no spotlight and no safety net. It's easy to throw shade at someone standing in the sun. But what they don't know is how long you lived in the storm. They weren't there when the sky stayed gray for months. When you sowed seeds with no sign of fruit. When your faith was the only thing keeping you moving. That's not luck. That's faith in motion. And while others are busy commenting from the sidelines, you're still walking. You're still growing. And in the next part, We'll look deeper at what happens when your blessings start to convict those who've chosen comfort over calling, and what you should do when the next attack doesn't sound like jealousy, but sounds like judgment. Stay with me, this next part gets even more real. Previously, we exposed the subtle bitterness hiding behind the words "must be nice," a phrase soaked in envy, often spoken by those who witnessed none of your struggle but still feel entitled to critique your success. But the story doesn't end there. Jealousy has more than one voice. See, what they don't talk about when they say "must be nice" is your obedience under pressure, your discipline when no one was watching, your faithfulness when quitting would have been easier, that quiet perseverance they're trying to dismiss as luck. That's not entitlement. That's endurance. That's grit. That's walking in obedience when the path was steep and the silence was deafening. But jealous people don't want to see that. They don't want to acknowledge the pain behind your peace. They'd rather rewrite your story, erase the struggle, delete the waiting, skip the process. They want your testimony without the tears, the calling without the crushing. So they reduce your journey to a punchline. Must be nice, they say, as if God's goodness in your life is some kind of joke. Let me tell you something clearly. People who are truly content don't speak like that. People who are rooted in purpose don't feel threatened by yours. They celebrate it. They honor it. Because they know what it takes to carry something from seed to fruit. So when someone says "must be nice," what they're really revealing is a restlessness within themselves. That phrase, it's a signal, a red flag. It tells you they've been watching your life more closely than they've been examining their own, and you don't need to explain yourself to them. You don't need to justify the favor on your life. Why? Because people will always judge your harvest, but they weren't there when you were sowing in silence. They weren't in the trenches. They didn't see the nights you almost gave up. And if they had walked your path, truth be told, they would have quit long before the first sprout broke the soil. So when they mock your harvest with shallow words, you don't argue. You don't defend. You simply smile. You nod. Because the fruit speaks for itself. The peace in your eyes, the strength in your silence, the purpose in your steps, it all says more than their cynicism ever could. And this isn't just about material success. No, what really bothers them is deeper than that. It's your healing, your joy, your discipline, your boundaries, your relationship with God. That's what unnerves them. When someone has been living in chaos for years, your calm becomes a confrontation. When their life is spinning, your clarity becomes uncomfortable. They don't know how to interpret a person who doesn't react, who doesn't play the game anymore, who's not trying to impress anyone but God. So they assume wrongly that everything you have was handed to you. They don't see the therapy, the fasting, the lonely prayers, the friendships that had to be let go, the breaking that came before the blessing. They don't know that before God ever lifted you, He humbled you. Before He brought increase, He brought a season of lack. Before He gave peace, He let the storm rage so loud, so fierce, you thought you'd never rest again. But now, here you are, walking in what you once only prayed for, living in the healing you never thought would come. And because they're not part of that process, they can't understand the price. So yes, they mutter again, "must be nice." And you know what? It is nice. It's nice to breathe again without fear. It's nice to smile and actually mean it. It's nice to see the fruit of years of faith. It's nice to wake up with vision and go to bed with peace. But let's not forget that niceness came with a price. And you paid it when nobody else could see the invoice. So don't you dare let someone's sarcasm cause you to doubt what God has done. Don't shrink back when someone questions your glow. Because they didn't build it. They didn't carry it. They didn't break with you, so they don't get to define it. You hold your head high. You keep your heart pure. And you let that light shine. Every time someone utters "must be nice," it's confirmation, not condemnation. It means the light on your life is visible. And no, it's not your job to shrink your shine so insecure people feel more comfortable in the shadows. Your responsibility is to stay humble, stay faithful, and keep walking with God. Because when He brings you through, when He lifts you out, when He restores what was broken, it is nice. And it's okay to say so. That phrase whispered in quiet corners or flung like a dart in public carries more than just words. It carries frustration. It carries projection. It carries insecurity. But none of that is your burden to bear. It's not that your success offends them. It's that your life convicts them. Because when people refuse to grow, they begin resenting those who do. And when your life starts to elevate, when your habits change, when your circle tightens, when your mind renews, jealousy doesn't always stay silent. Sometimes it lashes out. Sometimes it speaks. And when it speaks, it might sound like this: "You think you're better than us." In the next part, we'll pull back the curtain on what that phrase really means and why your elevation is stirring discomfort in places that once felt safe. Stay with me, because the next truth we uncover will shift how you carry your calling. They remember the version of you who wasn't sure, who doubted, who settled for less. You were predictable then, someone who didn't disrupt their comfort. But now you're choosing peace over chaos, discipline over ease, integrity over attention, and it unsettles them. Because you're no longer someone they can relate to, and that threatens the parts of them that fear change. You were once safe, but the moment you stepped into the version of yourself that God always intended, everything shifted. And while you might feel guilty for growing, don't let that guilt pull you back. When they say, "You think you're better than us," they're not confronting your attitude, they're confronting your elevation. They can feel it. They see it. Even if they pretend not to, they sense the change in you. And instead of asking, "How did you break free?" they accuse you of being prideful. Because it's far easier to call you arrogant than it is to examine their own stagnation. You didn't transform to impress anyone. You changed because you were exhausted from living beneath your calling, tired of pretending, tired of fitting into places that drained your spirit. So you made a choice. You stepped away from the cycle, the noise, the approval chasing. You got serious about healing. You walked into the light. And those who only ever knew your shadows, they got uncomfortable. It happens every time God elevates someone. Open your Bible. This isn't new. Joseph had dreams, and his own brothers sold him. David was anointed king, and his family questioned him. Jesus walked in truth, and the same crowd that praised his miracles screamed, "Crucify him," just days later. The people haven't changed. And neither has the spirit behind that cutting phrase. You think you're better than us, but you're not better. You're just free. Free from the need to please. Free from toxic cycles. Free from bitterness, from shame, from smallness. That's not arrogance, it's alignment. That's what happens when God gets a hold of your life. He transforms it completely. He doesn't just clean you up, he breaks chains so thoroughly that the people who once controlled those chains feel powerless. And sometimes angry. But listen closely. Don't shrink back to make others comfortable. Don't dim your light to protect their insecurities. You can still be humble and walk in boldness. You can still be loving and guard your peace. You can speak truth without venom. And when they throw accusations at you, when they say, "You've changed," or *you think you're better, *you don't need to retaliate, you know the truth. You were like them once, lost, broken, addicted to approval, drowning in silence, performing strength you didn't feel. But God found you. God healed you. He carried you through fires they never saw. And now, Now when they see the light on your life, they mistake it for pride because they never saw the dark room where God developed you. So walk in peace. Don't carry their offense. Don't carry their confusion. Just keep walking, keep growing, keep trusting that God knows what He's doing with your life. And when the voices rise, voices that sound like shame, like guilt, like accusation, remember, it's not really about you. It's about the spirit in them that doesn't want to change. You've changed and they know it. That truth still echoes from the last moment, and while you're not going back, they're still stuck in trying to make sense of how you got here. And that's when the whispers start. There's a statement that at first seems innocent, even observational. Some people just get everything handed to them. It sounds simple enough, like casual commentary, but if you listen closely, beneath its surface lies something darker: resentment that's been disguised as indifference. Bitterness hiding behind a shrug. It doesn't just diminish your blessings. It attempts to erase the story behind them. Because that phrase, that one sentence, doesn't just question your favor, it rewrites your journey. It brushes past the nights you cried yourself to sleep, the early mornings where you prayed for strength, the silent seasons of endurance that nobody else noticed. It conveniently ignores the discipline it took to stay the course, the sacrifices made when no one was watching, and the tears that watered the very ground where your faith grew. That's what jealousy does. It distorts reality until even truth looks suspicious. And when they say it asterisk, some people get everything handed to them asterisk, what they're really doing is trying to erase the prick you paid, the fires you walked through, and the obedience it took to keep trusting when nothing around you made sense. They're looking at your current chapter and acting like they know the whole story. But they don't. They see the joy, but not the journey. They admire the fruit, but ignore the roots. They recognize the position, but overlook the process. But God knows. God saw it all. He was there in the quiet when your heart was breaking but your hands stayed lifted. He was present in the moments when you sowed seeds of hope with nothing but faith in your pocket. He watched you give when you had very little, love when your heart felt empty, and show up when quitting felt easier. And now that God's promises are beginning to unfold in your life, now that the light is breaking through after years of walking in the dark, some people want to rewrite the narrative. They don't want to believe it came through pain, through persistence, through pressure. They want to believe it was just handed to you. Because it's easier for them to live with their choices if they believe you didn't have to make any. Let's be honest, jealousy is always looking for a shortcut. And when it can't find one, it creates a lie. A lie that says you didn't earn what you have. That God favored you unfairly. That you simply got lucky. But you and God both know the truth. You know what it cost to heal. You know what it meant to walk away from what was killing you, even when it was familiar. You know how hard it was to obey God when everything in you wanted to run the other direction. Nothing was handed to you. It was handed through you, through surrender, through persistence, through pain that shaped your purpose. But not everyone wants to acknowledge that. Because if they admit it took sacrifice to get here, they'll have to confront the comfort zones they've never left. If they recognize your journey required faith, they'll have to face the fear they've chosen instead. And so, they protect themselves with phrases like, well, not everyone's that lucky. They'd rather diminish your discipline than admit they could have made different choices. Because let's face it, it's far more convenient to believe that life just handed you a golden ticket than it is to face the uncomfortable truth that your obedience unlocked doors theirs never will. But here's what I want you to remember. Don't let their disbelief shake your confidence in what God did. Don't let their comments plant confusion in your mind. What God built in your life doesn't become less valid just because someone else can't understand it. You don't need to make your testimony smaller to fit their insecurity. You don't have to apologize for blessings you didn't fabricate. You didn't scheme your way here. You didn't manipulate your way forward. It was God who saw, God who led, God who brought you through. And if He brought you here, then let your story stand. Don't hide the path He used to take you higher. Let them talk. Let them say what they want to say. Because their opinions don't rewrite your process, and their assumptions don't cancel God's anointing. What you carry was never meant to be approved by them, it was meant to be stewarded by you. And if their discomfort grows as your calling unfolds, then so be it. You were never called to stay small just to keep others comfortable. So now, as we move forward, you'll start to see how the same people who doubted the process will begin to question the result, because when they can't explain the fruit, they'll try to discredit the roots. You see, once people can't discredit the process, and once they realize they can't rewrite the story of how you got here, they begin watching in silence, closely, intently, sometimes even obsessively, and though they may never say it aloud, though their mouths remain closed and their faces neutral, deep down in places they won't admit even to themselves, they know your calling came at a cost. They know your favor wasn't free. They know that what you now carry didn't arrive wrapped in ease, but was forged through trials they weren't willing to walk through. They may never clap. They may never offer a word of thanks for the quiet inspiration your life has become. And they may never acknowledge how your entrance has convicted their complacency. But hear me, don't you live for that kind of validation. Don't you start measuring your worth by their reactions. Because the truth is, you were never called to impress the crowd. You were called by the one who pulled you out of darkness when no one else even noticed you were drowning. He walked with you through seasons when others walked away. He gave you strength, but not in the way the world gives it. He placed it in the form of struggle. He handed you wisdom, but not without waiting. So now, when they talk, and they will talk when they assume, accuse, and analyze from the outside, let them. Let them say what they need to say to make sense of what they can't explain. Let them believe it was handed to you, because they never saw what was handed from you. They never saw the hours of sacrifice, the tears that soaked your pillow while you were still speaking life over your own future, the time you invested without applause, the trust you kept even when everything was silent, the tenacity you carried when your soul was barely standing. They didn't see the weight. They only see the results. And when people can't trace the origin of the fruit, they start questioning the authenticity of the root. But let me assure you, God saw it all. He saw what they didn't. The favor on your life is not some cosmic accident. It is not luck, and it is not favoritism. It is alignment. It is obedience. It is the direct result of staying faithful when quitting looked like the easier option. And so, the next time someone looks at you with narrowed eyes and says, "Some people just get everything handed to them," don't argue. Don't defend. Just smile, not out of pride, but out of peace, because you know the truth. It wasn't handed to you. It was handed to God, and He gave it back when the time was right. When people cannot explain your blessing, they often shift from questioning your process to questioning your character. That's how jealousy operates. It doesn't search for truth, it searches for justification. It can't accept that you got here with clean hands and a faithful heart, because if that's true, then they no longer have an excuse for why they haven't moved. So instead of admitting God's grace on your life, they whisper suspicion behind your back. They cast doubt. They throw shade. They must have done something shady, they say, not because you did, but because it makes them feel better about not doing what you did. And here's where the spirit of envy shows its true face. Not everyone will cheer when God lifts you. Some will look for cracks not because they exist, but because your stability unsettles them. And if they can't find flaws, they'll start creating them. They'll invent narratives, assume what they can't verify, and pass along stories they never took the time to understand. It's not truth thereafter, it's comfort, because tearing down what they don't understand is easier than rising to the level your obedience has taken you. But hear this, and let it settle in your spirit. There is nothing shady about surrender. There is nothing suspicious about staying faithful when it would have been easier to cheat, manipulate, or give up. What they don't see is how many nights you stayed up in silent struggle. What they don't know is how long you labored without applause, how consistently you showed up in places that drained you, and how hard you fought to keep standing when everything in your world said you should fall. They didn't witness the nights of intercession. They weren't there for the fasts, the sacrifices, the countless times you laid your own will on the altar. And because they never saw the crushing, they don't understand the oil. And that's okay, because this world is quick to slander what it can't comprehend. The enemy would love nothing more than to drown your testimony in the noise of doubt. But you don't need to defend your story. You don't need to justify your journey. Your fruit speaks out loudly. Your consistency is louder than their accusations. And your peace that unwavering, still peace that stays even in the storm is evidence enough that your life was built on surrender, not schemes. You didn't skip steps. You didn't compromise to get here. You didn't fake your way through the fire. You trusted God when nothing made sense. You honored Him when compromise would have been easier. And now that He's honoring you, some people simply can't handle it. They need your integrity to be fake. Because if it's real, if you really made it here by doing it God's way, then that means they'll have to deal with the uncomfortable truth. They could have too. But instead of looking in the mirror, they point the finger. And that's where we're headed next, because jealousy, once it fails to discredit your walk, will try to dismantle your witness. And when your testimony becomes too loud to ignore, they'll shift tactics and begin rooting for your downfall. They couldn't find any cracks in your character, so now they're hoping you'll collapse under pressure. That's the final card jealousy plays when it can't discredit your past or your process. It begins rooting for your failure. You'll hear it in the way they speak, quiet but cutting. Phrases soaked in doubt, masked as casual remarks. Let's see how long that lasts. They say, as if your faithfulness is a trend, as if your consistency is just a coincidence. But what they don't realize is that what looks effortless now was built on years of private sacrifice. Let them talk. Let them watch. Because the day will come when the truth will outshine the lies. The same people who whispered behind your back will witness what they thought was sudden success unfold as years of obedience layered in silence. What they assumed was luck will be revealed as labor. What they called favor without cost will be exposed as the slow, steady, sovereign hand of God, shaping every detail behind the scenes. People forget, you reap in public what you sow in private. And when you sow righteousness, when you choose integrity in the dark, when you walk in obedience without applause, you don't need to explain the harvest. You don't need to post a defense. Because the same God who saw your secret tears will vindicate you openly. He'll prepare a table not so you can gloat, but so they can witness His glory. And when they see the feast, they'll be reminded of your famine. When they see your strength, they'll remember your struggle. Maybe, just maybe, that moment will open their eyes. Maybe they'll stop accusing and start seeking the same God who brought you through. But even if they don't walk anyway, build anyway, worship anyway. Don't waste your all trying to explain the anointing to people who have already made up their minds. Don't get sidetracked trying to correct every lie or prove every critic wrong. You were never called to convince them. You were called to be consistent. Let your life speak. Let your light shine. Let your integrity echo through every false accusation and silent suspicion, because at the end of the day, it was never about proving yourself to people. It's always been about remaining faithful to the one who called you. You didn't get here by shortcuts. You didn't get here by manipulating outcomes. You got here by surrender, and surrender always leaves a trail of peace, of purity, of purpose. So when they say, "It seems shady," let them. When they question your motives, your methods, your momentum, smile. Not because you're arrogant, but because you're anchored. Because when your heart is clean and your hands are pure, you have nothing to fear. The favor of God will always look suspicious to those who never saw your struggle. But that's not your burden to carry. Your assignment is to walk humbly, love deeply, obey fully, and let God handle the results. And when God lifts you up, no man, no lie, no envy can bring you down. So keep pressing forward. Keep trusting. Keep building. Let the fruit do the talking. Because when it's God who opened the door, you don't owe anyone an explanation for how you walked through it. And now comes the final blow. Jealousy often tries to land a phrase that seems harmless, but carries the weight of doubt and silent celebration of your possible downfall. Let's see how long that lasts. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? But underneath that phrase is not concern. It's not critique. It's cynicism disguised as curiosity. It's their quiet hope that you'll break, that you'll burn out, that you'll back down. Because if you collapse, they don't have to deal with the fact that your progress exposed their passivity. But let me tell you something they've forgotten. Our God never starts something just to tease you with it. He finishes what he begins. He is not the author of confusion, he's the finisher of faith. So when they sit back, arms crossed, waiting to see how long you'll last, they're not watching a trend. They're witnessing a testimony. Your life is not a temporary burst of energy. It's not a moment of hype. It's a movement of grace. It's rooted. And roots don't argue. Roots don't perform. Roots grow quietly, deeply, and steadily. Jealousy thrives in shallow places, but growth thrives in depth. And when envy can't find failure, it starts predicting it. But that prediction, it will fail. They'll say it won't last, but they don't know what's holding you. They didn't see the nights you wept. They didn't hear the prayers. They didn't walk through the wilderness with you. So, no, they don't get to predict your future based on assumptions. Their opinions don't override your calling. Their doubts don't dismantle your destiny. And now, as they keep counting down, as they whisper, as they wait, they're about to witness something they never expected. Endurance. Real, Holy Spirit-fueled endurance. Not hype. Not performance. Not emotional momentum. But oil, the kind of oil that only comes from pressing. From crushing. From waiting. And now that it's flowing, nothing can stop it. So when they say, "Let's see how long that lasts," don't flinch. Just smile. Because they're not announcing your end, they're exposing their own fear. While they sit back, waiting for your collapse, they'll watch you rise. And not because of pride, but because of promise. Not because of hype, but because of Him. Because the same God who called you is the same God who's carrying you. He started this in you. And He's going to finish it. So walk boldly. Speak truth. Stand firm. Because when your foundation is God, you don't just survive. You overcome. So if you've ever been misunderstood, doubted, or quietly resented, let this be your reminder. God sees what they don't. And when He writes your story, no jealousy can erase it. Stay rooted. Stay faithful. And let the fruit of your life keep silencing every lie spoken behind your back. If this message spoke to you, share it with someone who needs it. And never forget, God's favor isn't fake. It's formed in fire. So let them sit in the shadows, whisper their doubts, and make quiet predictions about your downfall. Let them say, "Let's see how long that lasts," as if God's faithfulness was ever on a timer. Because the truth is, they never saw what it took to get here, and they definitely won't be able to stop what's coming next. They didn't see the nights when you had to worship through tears. They didn't hear the prayers that came from a place so deep, Words barely formed. They didn't witness the spiritual battles you fought while smiling in silence. They never saw the crushing that brought the oil. But God saw. God heard. God knew. And because it was God who started this, you don't need to fear how long it will last. He is not limited by opinions, timelines, or forecasts soaked in envy. He doesn't operate according to human doubt. His promise doesn't shrink just because someone else's faith does. What he planted in you no scoffer can uproot. What he breathed into your spirit no critic can suffocate. You are not standing because you're strong. You are standing because he is sustaining. You are not still walking because it's been easy. You're walking because grace has been carrying you every step of the way. And while they measure your journey with stopwatches, heaven has marked it with purpose. So when jealousy shows up in the form of sarcasm, when they smirk and say, "Let's see how long that lasts," don't explain. Don't shrink. Don't argue. Just keep walking. Keep building. You didn't manipulate it. You didn't chase it. You just stayed faithful. You trusted. You endured. You aligned. And now, you're walking in what they thought would never last. So when you hear them whispering behind your back, when they say you're arrogant, when they assume you're fake, when they hope your success fades, remember this: those voices don't define you. That spirit of jealousy isn't fighting you, it's fighting the evidence of God's presence in your life. And that's why you don't need to fight back. Your fruit will speak louder than their words. Your consistency will outlast their commentary. And your endurance, rooted in grace, will silence every shadow of doubt. Because when it's God who elevates you, no one can pull you down. When it's God who anoints you, no lie can cancel your calling. And when it's God who opens the door, no rumor, no whisper, no hidden jealousy can close it. So keep walking. Keep shining. Keep rising. Not in pride, but in purpose. Not for applause, but for assignment, not to be seen, but to be sent. And when they say, "Let's see how long that lasts," you just smile because you already know it will last as long as God's hand is on it. And that, my friend, is forever. Thank you for your listening. Goodbye and see you in the next video.